Guys, we love California, and we love the conservatives in California, and I love this little group over here. And by the way, I just need to say one thing. You know more MAGA hats were sold to California than any state in the country by a factor of a lot. We'll take it back. We'll take the state back.
Fantastic. Well, Eric, the book has been out for about a week, and chapter 12 is titled Proud of the Fight. You answer the question in that chapter, why this book? So tell us, why did you write the book?
Yeah. Somebody had to memorialize the nonsense they put my father and the family through. The media did everything they could to cover it up, right? Every aspect of it. And it started the second we went down that escalator. We touched the bottom of the escalator, and they came after us like we were literal dogs. And this is everybody. These are people that we used to be friends with. I mean, NBC News. We saved that. My father saved that channel. We had The Apprentice. I was on it for the last 7 seasons. And that saved NBC News. He got to the bottom of the escalator. They wanted to extend it. He said, listen, I've got something else in mind, and that something else was going to be the presidency. He gets to the bottom of that escalator a couple weeks later, and it's like NBC didn't even know who we were. My father's hand came off the Bible on January 20th of 2017. 12 minutes later, there was an article from the Washington Post. This is when the impeachment of Donald Trump begins. They didn't give him 12 minutes, guys. And they made up the dirty dossier, right? Saying that he did unthinkable things, right? Then they made up the Russia hoax. I was right in the middle of the Russia hoax. And in fact, I have one of our corporate attorneys right there. And Jill, stand up. You were right in the middle of the Russia hoax as well. And we get a call from the FBI. I hear you have secret servers in the basement of Trump Tower communicating with the Kremlin. And I go, guys, we literally, at this point, we didn't know what a delegate was. We had no damn idea what we were doing in politics. Like, guys, we knew absolutely zero. I mean, we're hotel developers and real estate developers. And yet this is a cycle, and this is what was perpetuated on our family nonstop. And then it was the indictments, the 91 indictments. And then it was the impeachments, the first impeachment, the second impeachment. Then you saw what they did to Kavanaugh. And then they pulled us all off of social media. Twitter canceled us, Facebook canceled us, Instagram canceled us, YouTube canceled us. They turned down the dials. They came after us in every way, shape, or form. They debanked the company. They deplatformed the company. They pulled my father off the ballot in Maine. They pulled him off the ballot in Colorado. Right? They raided our home. They raided Melania's closet. They raided Barron's room. They did everything they could to destroy us. And I became the most subpoenaed person in American history, 112 subpoenas. All of them came from Pocahontas, as we like to call her. I'm not sure. Is that politically correct? I got 112 subpoenas. I became the piñata in that I didn't have constitutional protections, right? I wasn't in the executive branch. And so every time they wanted to get to my father, guess what they did? They went after the company, and they came through us. So about $400 million later, which is what it cost us to defend ourselves from these animals, right? They tried, again, everything. They wanted to silence him. They wanted to, arrest him. They wanted to throw him in jail and throw away the keys. They wanted to divide our family. They wanted to take the name off of every single Trump building for doing absolutely nothing wrong other than we decided to question the status quo of Washington, D.C. And the media was behind it, and the DOJ spied on our campaign. They spied on my father's first campaign. The FBI raided, his house. They planted classified folders on the floor of his office, as was admitted, right? Jack Smith finally admitted that they did that. Interestingly enough, when they raided Mar-a-Lago, they were yelling at us. Jill also remembers this. You immediately turn off all security cameras. Think about that. The FBI was literally telling us to turn off our security cameras at the property, and I go, I won't do it. We're not going to do this. And so, guys, it had to be materialized what the true siege was. And then when all of that didn't work, about 6 weeks before Butler, I was on Sean Hannity's show. And I go, Sean, they've tried to do everything, right? This is when we were in a courtroom every single day, 34 felonies in New York with Judge Merchan. Then you had Fulton, Georgia. You had Fannie Willis. You had Jack Smith, obviously. You had Letitia James. They were all coming after us. You had Judge Merchan. You remember all of these characters. And I said on Sean Hannity's show one night, I go, my biggest fear is that they try and inflict physical harm because they've tried to do everything else they could to try and take the guy down. And then they tried to kill him in Butler. And then they tried to kill him 8 weeks later at the golf course. And then they killed our friend Charlie Kirk, who's a dear friend. I've sat on the stage with Charlie Kirk. And somebody had to tell the world what the siege was, because we know the Democrats, we know the revisionist history. They love revisionist history. And they would have set the narrative, and somebody had to materialize it from an insider standpoint for the rest of time. And that's why I wrote the book, and I'm incredibly proud. And it went to #1 instantly. The second it came out, it went to #1. And I was just telling Dave on the way here, I was just yelling at Simon & Schuster. Kim and I were just yelling at Simon & Schuster because they ran out of books again on Amazon. I go, guys, you got to stop running out of books. They go, you've sold 8 weeks worth of books in 5 days, right? And like they're totally out. So it's
So, Eric, what's it going to feel like to be a New York Times bestselling author?
I mean, if New York Times is honest about it, listen, I think we've always believed in the whole motto, too big to rig. Does that make sense? And I think this one's going to be too big to rig. We're like 6x what the last New York Times bestseller was last week in terms of total book sales. So I think if I don't get it, I think it would be a pretty shocking thing. But I would like to see my name up there just because it's kind of the ultimate. I can't say it in here. There's children. There's a beautiful child right there. But it's the ultimate. You can probably guess what. No, but listen, I love my father dearly, and he was the toughest guy. He was the most courageous guy. He never cowered. They wanted him to drop out. They wanted him to leave the race. They wanted to make this billionaire's life so difficult, so ugly, that he finally said, you know what, let's just go back to Mar-a-Lago. Let's live a great life. Let's go play golf every day. Let's, fly around on, Trump Force One, be kind of the, kingmaker of the Republican Party with a great Reagan family and, live a wonderful life. And he wasn't going to do that. I mean, he didn't care. I mean, the more times they indicted him, the harder he punched back. And
well, Eric, you made the point in the book that your dad was the calmest of all. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? I mean,
yeah, he always had this eerie calm, right? And no matter when it was, when he called me from the hospital at Butler, super calm, totally unfazed. When they raided Mar-a-Lago, the story I was telling you about a second ago, I called him up. I asked my team when I got that call, does he know about this? No, he doesn't know about this. So I go, okay, I'll take care of it. So I call him up. And he goes, okay, honey, meet me in the office in 5 minutes. We both happened to be in New York at the time. And we went down to his office, and that's when the tweet was written, the FBI is raiding my home, my famous Mar-a-Lago home right now. This is one of the greatest abuses of power in the history of the country, blah, blah, blah. But he was so unfazed. I'll never forget, we were leaving after one of the indictments. This was the Florida indictment, and we were on the plane. This was a Jack Smith boxes hoax. And by the way, we've won every single one of them, just as a little FYI. And we're flying up to New Jersey, and he's going to give a press conference. And I'm sitting there, and we're watching the plane take off from Miami airport, right? Watching all the helicopters are above. And so we're on the plane, watching the plane on the big TV. And we're all sitting there. I mean, he just got indicted. We have to go explain this to the whole country, even though we knew the whole thing was a sham. And out of the corner of my eye comes a pink starburst, comes flying across the cabin, and whacks me in the side of the shoulder. And he's just like screwing off. He's just having fun, And for a guy who just got indicted, most people would have been in like the fetal position, crying and sucking their thumb, right? And he was just a remarkable guy. Whenever things got horrible, and don't get me wrong, it affects everybody. I don't care how, right? But he would never allow it to show. And again, it caused him to fight back. And I always joke that there was like a little bit of like a masochistic type tendency. Like there was like a propensity to just enjoy the feeling of pain throughout this process, just in a little bit different way. He was always great at that fight. He was always best in that fight. He was always best when he was under pressure. And, he wrote 2 books in his early life, right? The Art of the Deal and The Art of the Comeback. And if there's ever a way that 2 books that were written 30 years ago mirrored a second part of your life, The Art of the Deal would have been the 2016 campaign. The Art of the Comeback, no question would have been what we went through between 2020 and 2024.
Well, your book is a major contribution because the long list of everything that was thrown at him, it actually defies any one person keeping it at their fingertips, right? So you go into the Russian hackers, the Steele dossier, Fannie Willis, Alvin Bragg, Jack Smith, Letitia James, the gag orders, right? You point out, for example, that the Taliban, Boko Haram, Al-Qaeda, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Ayatollah in Iran all kept their Twitter accounts, and your dad didn't.
Yeah, we didn't keep the Twitter accounts, and we were also thrown off of Facebook, and they turned down our dials. I'll never forget. I mean, I think we've been pretty loud over the last 10 years, I think you'd say, right? And I mean, I didn't gain a single follower on any platform, meaning over that period of time. By the way, until Elon bought it, and then sure enough, in like one day, it's like, you know, I don't know. I'm a pretty good guy at statistics. Like I understand math. So you mean to tell me I don't gain a single follower for an 8-9 year period of time, and then Elon buys it, and the following day I go up by about 10 million. I don't know. Like, why do I think something fishy was happening here, right? But that's the whole thing, guys. I mean, the reason I call it under siege was that's what it was. It was a siege. It was a siege to silence. It was a siege to bankrupt. It was a siege to gag order, to destroy a company. It's clearly to embarrass. I mean, think about the fact that you had a disgruntled lady in Hillary Clinton who literally paid for a dirty dossier that made up unthinkable things. I mean, I can't even say what they are in this room because they're so vile and disgusting. And she paid for it. And there's been zero ramifications for this. And everybody's like, Donald Trump is weaponizing government. I'm like, I don't know. I think we need a little accountability here. Like, for anybody else, it would be met with the greatest slanderous lawsuits, and yet they got away with it. They spied on his campaign. They got away with it. There was no accountability. They made up the fact that we had secret servers in a basement, and they perpetuated this lie, not only because they wanted it to be their October surprise, right? And the Reagans would know more about October surprises than anybody, but October surprise is defined as something that they pop on you so last minute that you don't have enough time to disprove it to be false, and it tanks you in the polls. But what they actually did was when she lost so embarrassingly against a bunch of imbeciles who literally didn't know a thing about politics. I mean, we were real estate people, right? We didn't know a thing about immigration, guys. It was like fake it till you make it. It was when she lost to a bunch of people who had never been in this world, who beat her at her own game, they perpetuated that lie for another 3 years. And in doing so, they literally pitted the biggest nuclear superpowers against each other. Think about how evil and devious that is when everybody knew that there was no connection with Russia. In fact, there was even emails from Podesta and those guys saying, you better not look into this because this thing is about as thin as it comes. It's not going to exactly hold water. And so it just disgusting tactics, disgusting tactics. But it had to be materialized, and wow, did America catch on to all of it. And there's only so many times you can cry wolf before people call nonsense. And that's exactly what they did. That's exactly what this country did, which is why we had the greatest political victory of all time last November.
So let's go into the costs. The costs were tremendous. So how much did you spend in legal expenses?
About $400 million.
So think about that, $400 million. And then in the book you talk about, the obvious huge opportunity costs in terms of your time and what you could have been doing with that money. But then you also make the point that law enforcement resources that could have been devoted to actual legitimate law enforcement needs got diverted as well.
Well, they didn't care about law enforcement needs. I mean, we were sitting in a courthouse in New York. This was one of the cases we got totally overturned. And they're reading off 34 felony indictments for a $100,000 payment that my father didn't even make. 34. Al Capone, right? Al Capone got one felony and he did some bad stuff, right? I think we could all admit that. My father got 34 for a $100,000 payment that he didn't even make. And as they're reading off the verdict, there was a guy in a McDonald's in the middle of Times Square hacking people to death with a machete, right? And the reason I'm saying this is it's so insane. You had a district attorney who literally ran on the platform of decriminalizing everything, other than if their name was Donald Trump, right? And that's what they did. And all of it, guys, was coordinated with the White House, right? And it has come out. The White House logs are pretty succinct. And when you had Fani Willis going to the White House, every couple weeks, when her boyfriend was going to the White House and to the vice president's house every few weeks, when Letitia James was going there every few weeks, when Alvin Bragg was going there every few weeks, right? This whole thing was coordinated. And why was it coordinated? Because Joe Biden was the worst president in the history of this nation by a lot, right? And nothing was working. Nothing was working.
There was another cost that's really striking and that I don't think most people, if they don't read the book, they wouldn't know about it. But Tell us about the Eric Trump Foundation, about your work with St. Jude. You've raised over the years $50 million for St. Jude, but what? Yes, absolutely. But even that gets swooped into. So what happened with St. Jude?
So I started a charity for St. Jude when I was 20 years old. I went to every children's hospital in the country. I knew I wanted to do something great for kids. We had the resources, we had the members, we had the golf clubs, and I hated charity in New York, right? You'd go to some rubber chicken dinner. No one would know why they were actually there. They were there to get a picture taken, and I was like always disgusted by it, like even at a young age. And so I go, I'm gonna start a charity for St. Jude. The first year we raised $210,000. We doubled it, the next year doubled it. We've surpassed $50 million total raised, right? My cumulative expense ratio is 8.2% in running the charity for all the years. 8.2, that's the lowest expense ratio of any charity in the nation. And Hillary was getting killed. In 2016, she was getting absolutely massacred for the Clinton Foundation, right? They did bad work in Haiti. You know, it became a total sham. You know, the State Department was involved. It seemed like everything was kind of pay for play. They were flying G550s around the world and, you know, on charitable funds. And I mean, they were getting mocked. She was getting killed. And so one day I come into my office and somebody calls me up and they say, you know, the Attorney General of the state of New York's about to do a press conference about you. I go, about me? What about me? Like, do I have to do with the Attorney General of the state of New York? I'm not sure if I understand. And they get up to the microphone and, you know, we're hereby launching an investigation into the Eric Trump Foundation, you know, et cetera, and goes on. And, you know, for financial improprieties, I'm sitting there saying financial improprieties. I have an 8% expense ratio, of which 4% of that's credit card processing. Like what, you know, we're the best. Okay. We didn't have a single employee. Now, we didn't have a single, like, I'd be sitting there until midnight stuffing envelopes and, right, and so, you know, it was my first subpoena. I'll never forget it. And I can't tell you how bad that one hurt because I did everything I could. I built the largest ICU dedicated to, you know, terminally ill children on earth at St. Jude, and we've done so much more ever since.
And they didn't care, and they went after you. And tell us about Colin, because this is it's really moving in the book. You talk about this one young little kid named Colin who you developed an 8-year relationship with, and these are the kinds of people hurt by that.
So Colin was a little boy from Ithaca, New York, and he got cancer, and everybody told him just go home and effectively die. Right, as horrible as that is, it's, you know, I wasn't much older than. And I saw Colin grow up into this 8-year-old, and St. Jude saved his life over and over and over again when everybody just said he had zero chance. He'd just go home, call it quits, nothing we can do, and St. Jude just never ever stopped. And I saw this beautiful boy grow into, you know, an 8-year-old, and he became the fabric of kind of the foundation. He didn't miss a single one of our events, and he ended up passing. And I spoke at Colin's funeral, and it was deeply impactful to me. But when that Attorney General came after us, right, asked for every document, right, they wanted the discovery things, costs a ton of money, all because they wanted a counter-narrative for Hillary Clinton, and they couldn't find a single period that was out of place. They couldn't find a damn thing. And so 18 months later, right, we still hadn't heard back from them. And I'm sitting there, and this whole thing had kind of gone away, and a reporter goes up to, this was Letitia James at the time, "Are you still investigating the Eric Trump Foundation?" "Oh, yes, we are actively investigating." And I'm sitting there saying, "You dirty people, you dirty," I have other words for it, and I'll keep it PC. You know, you are going after one of the greatest charities dedicated, and honestly, to St. Jude's credit, because they're not a political organization, they stay out of politics, they were enraged. They were enraged by the treatment. I was on their boards, and that was the reason, I think the reason Dave's bringing it up is that was the first subpoena of 111 more that would come, that were all intended to destroy our lives. You know, they would subpoena us, you know, give us every email that you have that has the word national and international in it. Well, every one of our golf clubs is Trump National Golf Club, and every one of our hotels is Trump International, right? And then they'd add a whole bunch of other, you know, in value. And you're sitting there saying every email signature in the entire, so what? So where you give them every email, you know, and you'd have some crooked judge on the other side, yeah, give them every email, you know, and so 25 million emails later, and they would comb through every single one, and they still couldn't get us. That's how good we were. But they wanted to take us down. They wanted to see Donald Trump off that stage in any way, whether it's bankruptcy, whether it's a felony, whether it's gagging him. They wanted him so uncomfortable. And the easiest deal we could have ever made, is if I went to them and said, you know what? We'll exit stage right. You know, you guys drop all this other nonsense. They would have made that deal like that. And honestly, he just wanted to fight these people. He wanted to fight them, and he wanted to win, and we did. And so
part of the contribution of the book is you lay out in great detail what you call the playbook. Right? So it actually has 12 elements. You were just talking about element 2, which is go fishing. But maybe, I'm not asking you to summarize the playbook, but just kind of what was your thinking around, I mean, you lived through this, and then you articulate it, so maybe people can now be a little bit better positioned to deal with it when it's unleashed on them.
Well, you know what, I think it's harder now. I think it's harder because I think we've exposed the corruption for exactly what it is, and also we've killed the mainstream media. I think it's actually, if on my father's tombstone, I can't tell you how hard it was in 2016, because you had NBC, you had ABC, you had CNN, you had Fox, but it was catering to just a very specific kind of audience at that time, and all those networks are dead. My wife, she has a show, Laura Trump, My View with Laura Trump. It's on Saturday night at 9 p.m., which is considered, in TV world, that's considered like Death Valley, right? And she gets about 2.4 million people on the average Saturday night. Caitlin Collins from CNN, on a Wednesday or Thursday in the middle of the week at the same time slot, 9 p.m., she's getting like 500,000 people. Guys, the mainstream media in this country is dead. And it's been replaced with independent voices. Like, look how powerful Joe Rogan's become. Look how powerful Patrick Bet-David's become. Look how powerful so many people want independent voice out there. Right, that can actually be critical of the other side, that's not, that actually loves this country and believes in this country and can be critical thinkers. They don't have that in any of the networks. And so now I think it's a little bit easier because, I think there's a counter narrative for the first time. It's funny when you see, I'm not sure you saw Chuck Schumer, he's complaining about this. Trump now owns social media. It's like, I don't know, people just like us more than they like you guys because they're not into men my size swimming in women's sports. They're just not, they're not into this stuff, right? Like, they're not into the indoctrination of our beautiful children. Like they've been on the receiving end of all of this weaponization, and they don't like it anymore. And that's why they've tuned you out. And so I think he really did a great service for this nation in terms of beating back the media. They don't have the power that they had 10 years ago, and I think that's a great thing for this nation.
One of the themes in the book is you talk about flipping adversity into opportunity, right? So you get debanked, you pursue crypto opportunities. You get thrown off established social media, you create Truth Social. So kind of how is that in your playbook, and how do you see opportunities going forward like that?
By the way, I need to have Greg, you guys stand up. I'm going to embarrass you, but so you know what, and I'm going to get to the second part of your question, but you mentioned debanking. They did everything they could to call every bank in the country, the regulators, including Greg's, and they wanted us off the rails. They wanted us to have no bank accounts. They wanted us gone, right? That was another form of the siege. This man owns a great bank. It's called Axos Bank. It's out of California, and this guy never, ever, ever left our side. Ever left our side. And by the way, I can't tell you how badly they were trying to shake them down. I mean, I was getting the calls, Capital One dumped 300 accounts from us overnight. I get a call, congratulations, after 20 years, we're no longer banking you, right? JP Morgan did it, and Bank of America did it, First Republic did it, Consumer Savings Bank, Bryn Mawr Trust. I mean, I could go on and on with the amount of people. And then every other vendor, Shopify and everything else, they dumped us like we were dogs. And that man right there, he's a Christian man. He's a person of faith. He's a great Republican. He would never, ever, ever pull our accounts. But honestly, when they started debanking us, when we were losing bank accounts in the middle of the night, the very same people that were coming after us were going after the crypto guys. And they started telling us the stories. I go, yeah, that person's coming after me. And sometimes like the enemy of your enemy becomes your friend. Does that make sense? And you realize how smart these guys were. And it's a little bit of a different type of banking that Greg does. But I realized that there is nothing that can't be done on blockchain better, faster, cheaper, more transparently than using JP Morgan's rails. And I'll never forget, I went, under my father's first administration, Laura and I moved down to New York. We had to get, down to Florida. We had to get out of communism, right? We had enough of communism. And And finally, one day after Letitia James and everything else, I go, well, let's get the hell. What are we still doing here? And we bought a house, and it was 2.1% interest rates at that time. And I go, honey, we'd be morons if we didn't get financing right on the house. We could have paid for it, but why wouldn't you take 2% money? So we went out, and with a bank that I have banked with for 25 years, it took 120 days of going through a know your customer. Oh. And by the way, I had plenty of assets to cover the purchase of this, right? Like, it took 120 days with a bank, and at the end, the last day, they denied it for me because I was a politically exposed person. And I'm sitting there saying, all right, well, we'll buy the house, no problem. We're going to buy the house, but I can't wait to see so many of you guys out of business, right? And honestly, I think it's one of the things that blockchain's good, very different than what kind of Greg does, but in terms of day-to-day, custodial accounts, why does JP Morgan need a tower in every city around the country with people pushing bottles of water? There's nothing that cryptocurrency can't do better, cheaper, faster, more transparently. And that's why we got into cryptocurrency. And now everybody's yelling. I see Caitlin Collins was yelling at me the other night on CNN. You got into cryptocurrency. I'm like, I didn't have a damn choice. They debanked us. Like, it was like the only rail that we possibly had left. And it's been amazing, and I believe in it with all my heart.
As a quick aside, where do you see Bitcoin and other cryptos going in terms of price and longevity?
I think Bitcoin's going to go absolutely parabolic. I think it's going to go absolutely parabolic. And I think this year it's going to go parabolic. It's the single greatest asset class, and we're probably getting off topic, but it's the single greatest asset class in the last 10 years. It's gone up 70% a year over year for the last, decade. There's probably no better performing asset than cryptocurrency. And, cryptocurrency is approximately where the internet was in 1999, if you think about it. I mean, we're on the 1 yard line, and everything's going to get replaced by blockchain. The rails, stablecoin, right? I mean, the entire world is going to be denominated on, not the entire world, but a good percentage of the world is going to be denominated on US-based stablecoin, backed 1-to-1 by the US dollar based on, treasuries. There's no question that's coming. Everybody in Asia wants the US dollar. Everybody in South America wants the US dollar. Everybody in Africa wants the US dollar. So crypto is going to fly. I mean, crypto is absolutely going to fly. But then you mentioned Truth Social. Same thing was happening. When we got debanked, when we got deplatformed from Twitter and Instagram and YouTube, there's no way left to communicate, right? And by the way, the media was all making a cognizant effort at this point just to shut him down. They wouldn't cover his rallies. They wouldn't cover his voice. And so we go out and we pop up Truth Social, and everybody joins Truth Social right away. And what ended up happening is he would post something on Truth Social. Everybody in the world was copying it, and then they would go over to Twitter and they would paste it. And it drove them crazy. It drove them absolutely crazy. And then sure enough, Elon came in and saved the day, right? Everybody was ridiculing him at the time, saying that $44 billion was a little bit too much for that social media platform, and I think it was probably the greatest investment of his life. So I think he would do it times 100. And he also saved free speech with it.
But you touched on this in the banking context, but in many different ways, you go into how friends turned on you, right? So, and you have a line in the book: the toughest personalities often turned out to be the weakest, while the humble and unassuming proved to be the strongest. What was it like dealing with human nature and some fair weather friends and so on?
Wow, was it quiet at times? And wow, did it get loud at times, right? And you always have to remember who was there during the quiet times. And honestly, my company was amazing. Our company was amazing. And so many of them are sitting in the front row. Lily runs Trump LA. If anybody's ever played that, stand up, Lily. And Kim, stand up. And Keith, I've got so many members of our teams, and these guys did not break. Lily literally fended off the entire left coast for our entire family for the last 20 years, right? And did 10 years worth of politics. And guys, I can't tell you, we had people who were there in the worst of times, who rode the storms out with us. And then we had people who miraculously showed up in the best of times. I can't tell you, when we won on November 8th of 2016, I must have gotten 5,000 text messages in the next 24 hours. Hey, buddy, I know you've been really busy. I didn't want to disturb you, but just know I was fighting in the background the entire time. I'm like, you dirty. Like, no, you weren't. We lived at that point in an age of social media where you knew exactly where everybody stood. and it's like you disingenuous human being. But what's really amazing is then you had so many people who wanted to be part of the winning team again, all right? And then sure enough, 2020 rolls around. And guys, I can't tell you how bad that hurt. We won 2020, and I don't care if I upset the media by saying that. There is not a sane individual who thinks that Joe Biden got 16 million more votes than Barack Obama did in 2012. Not a single sane human being. And by the way, why has the media never asked Obama about this? Like, I guarantee you, I want to ask Obama this one day. Barack, do you believe that Joe Biden, who couldn't get through a sentence and literally did not leave his basement, got 16 million more votes than you did in 2012? And I think Barack would even honestly say zero chance, right? Zero chance. Like, I don't even think, as home team as he is to the Democratic Party, I don't even think he would be willing to admit that. But I can't tell you how bad that, I mean, we got 12 million more votes than we did in 2016. I mean, on every front, it felt like we won. We had the enthusiasm. And honestly, it's really remarkable. In one of my father's books, he always talked about the days, the art of the comeback, the days when the phone stopped ringing. And I'll never forget how quiet that period of time was, outside our company and outside people who have been incredible, right? Everybody singing in this front row. But it's amazing how quiet it became, other than a select few. And I can tell you, you hold on to those people, and you know exactly the good ones, and you know exactly the bad ones. You knew who were there in the good times, the ones that were bad. And then guess what happened on November 5th of 2024? My phone went crazy again. It's like, really? But the coolest part about all of this, the coolest part about all of this is that 4 years ended up being the greatest blessing from God, right? And I really believe in this concept called the law of unintended consequences, right? And as much as it stunk at the time, and as much as it hurt at the time, honestly, it was the greatest blessing. I mean, now we have the Senate, we have the House, we've got 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court, we obviously have the executive branch, we have a dead media, you have a Democratic Party that is totally insane and has absolutely zero leadership. No disrespect to the former vice president, but you've got a killer in there now. You've got Rubio in there who's a killer. You've got Hegseth in there who's a killer. You've got Holman in there who's a killer. I mean, they are absolutely taking names, right? I mean, they are not holding back. And my father is throwing so much lead in the air right now that they don't know what the hell to do with it. Like, they can't count, And by the way, and he's like right on all the issues. And the Democrats have lost their PR arm, which used to be the mainstream media. Like, they've lost that arm. So they can't fight it. They were wrong on the issues. They've got no leadership. And all of a sudden, they just can no longer catch kind of the fury that's coming at them. Like, what, you're going to fight against peace in the Middle East? I mean, right now, we're literally watching them try and prevent my father from cleaning up Chicago. He took care of Washington, D.C. in 12 days. They arrested... They arrested 4,300 people in 12 days, and miraculously, crime went to zero. And then he goes, I want to do the exact same thing in Chicago, and Pritzker, no, I don't want you coming in here. I mean, can you believe it? Can you? And by the way, and thank you to the men and women of law enforcement. We love you guys. We love you so much. And that includes the Secret Service. But don't tell me these guys can't clean up Chicago. They'll take care of Chicago in about 2.5 seconds if they take the handcuffs off them and actually let them do what they did so well in D.C. when they finally empowered them, and didn't come after them for all sorts of nonsense. And so, anyway.
Well, Eric, in the book, you just praised law enforcement. In the book, you extensively praise law enforcement. You also point out something tremendously nefarious, which is that at the leadership level, the politicized leadership level, there was a blind eye or a deaf ear turned to pleas for more protection for the president. So tell us about what you experienced in terms of the politicization of the top echelons of the government, including the law enforcement community, which you're very clear to not blame the frontline gun carriers, as you call them.
I think more of my best friends are law enforcement than probably any other, right? I mean, I probably have more good friends in law enforcement than I do in real estate, as crazy as that that sounds, right? This is not the gun carriers. This is not the tough guys. These are the eighth floors of these respective agencies, right, who become bureaucrats. These are not the ones you want in a gunfight with you. These are not the ones you want in a foxhole with you. That much I can tell you, right? And I mean, look at Comey. Comey spent literally his entire time as FBI director leaking memos to the New York Times. And I was on Hannity the other night, and I go, listen, Sean, I'm kind of like an old school guy. You know what I want? Like, I want our FBI director making sure that planes don't fly into buildings and, terrorists don't run the streets and that, criminals are caught. And I tell one story in the book. I'll never forget it. This is when I lost faith in the leadership of some of these big law enforcement agencies. And by the way, they're all getting cleaned up now. And Cash is a dear friend of mine doing a great job. And Dan Bongino's a dear friend of mine doing a great job. But it was 2017, and I got a call that there's a threat against the Trump organization, and that the FBI wants to brief me at FBI headquarters. So we sneak down there. They swear secrecy, don't tell anybody. And so we go down there. The only people that knew about this was my Secret Service detail leader at the time. So we go down. We drive into the FBI building in Lower Manhattan. We go into the parking garage. No one knows I'm there. No one in the company. No one knows I'm there. And we go up to the 8th floor. We go into one of these skiffs. You sign your life away, and they keep telling you how confidential everything is. And there's a cyber threat against the Trump organization. I go, guys, we have an IT department. Like, I can see threats come in every day. No different than like the most basic IT departments can see nefarious actors trying to get into your servers and other things. All right, you're not telling me anything I don't know. Well, sir, it's very serious. I go, okay, is it Russia? No. Is it China? Is it Iran? And their eyes go like this. Fine. So you couldn't have just told me on the phone, like, Iran's trying to break into your computer servers, but sir, you can't tell anybody about this. You can't tell anybody about it. Okay, guys, I won't tell anybody about this. This has been the least informative meeting where you've told me absolutely nothing, despite the great buildup of bringing me all the way downtown for this. And so no one knew. I never forget, I was driving out of the parking garage of FBI headquarters downtown, and my phone rings. And this guy named John Santucci from ABC News. He's kind of a friend of mine. He's one of these guys who just knows everybody, and his sources are always right. I mean, he's good at what he does, and he's always a reasonable person, as much as I hate that network. And by the way, we won a big lawsuit against him for doctoring the whole Kamala 60 Minutes video. And John said to me, he goes, what are you doing at FBI headquarters? I go, John, I have no idea what you're talking about. He goes, Eric, listen, you know I'm like a well-sourced person. Like, I'm not, like, what are you doing down there? I go, John, seriously, I have no idea what you're talking about. He goes, Eric, you're down there right now. I know you're down there right now. What are you doing down there? I go, John, I have no idea what you're talking about. But I mean, like, if I was down here, what would I be doing? I'm not even sure if I understand, and who would even be telling you if I was down here? Well, the PR office in Washington, D.C. for the FBI just called me to specifically tell me that they were briefing you on a threat, a cybersecurity threat from Iran against your company. And my phone was on speaker at this point, and the detail leader I had at the time was sitting there. He's a tough guy from North Carolina. He was gritting his teeth with his fist clenched. And honestly, it was when I realized that there was truly a deep state. Like, I mean, they just wanted that. They wanted the narrative that they were trying to help and they were trying to be cooperative, and then all the Russia stuff was adding in at the same time because of the servers and everything else and cybersecurity. They're trying to blend everything together, but they literally leaked that to the papers. And then you had Kimberly Cheadle, right, with Butler. The reason that there was no counter snipers is because the roof was too sloped and all this nonsense, right? These are not the best and the brightest, right? They are the politicians who do what it takes to climb the ranks of these organizations. I can tell you that the men and women over here are the best and the brightest because I know them and they're the greatest people you've ever met. And those are the exact people who should be running these agencies, not so many of kind of these DEI picks that were put in place, in all these agencies. And thank God my father's put an end to all of that. He's put an end to that in the military. He's put an end to that in law enforcement. And our country would be better served for it.
A moment ago, you mentioned God. Your faith and the faith of your family is addressed rather extensively in the book, right down to nightly prayers that you and your kids cite. You invoke Luke 12:48, to whom much is given, much is required. Tell us more about your faith, how it keeps you going, how it keps your family going. Just in the context of everything you went through, tell us about your faith.
I'm so impressed by him, by the way. I mean, the book's been out for 5 days, and he's clearly got this down pat. It's amazing. Good job. There's no question that God was guiding this process. There's no question that God was guiding this process. You know, Hillary raised $1.5 billion. We self-funded a campaign. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. Like, don't tell me that somebody wasn't looking down and, like, helping guide the ship a little bit, because otherwise we would have been hitting rocks and we would have been dead. We would have been dead. You know, at Butler that day, turning your head at the last moment, right? Like, and then having a perfect American flag roll up in the perfect shape of an angel right above you. There's a great man who wrote a prayer who was on that stage that day who's very close to us. It's called the Protector's Prayer. And he wrote this prayer long before Butler. He's one of the agents that ran up on that stage into gunfire. And he talked about the man on his left and the woman on his right. And he wrote the Protector's Prayer, which is like a law enforcement prayer, a couple years before Butler happened. He ended up being on that stage, and there was a man to the left, and there was a woman to the right. Corey, the person who died that day, Corey he kept saying, his wife told me this, when we did the return to Butler, his wife was right next to him, right next to Laura and I, and kept on saying that Corey said that day to her repeatedly that morning before the rally that Donald Trump is going to call me up on stage. Donald Trump is going to call me up on stage. And she goes, honey, he's not calling you up on stage. I mean, like, there's going to be like 50,000 people there. He's never met you. He's not calling you up on stage. Like, where's this coming from now? I feel in my heart Donald Trump's calling me up on stage. And listen, 2 days later, at the RNC convention, you know, whose uniform was up on stage, whose hat was up on stage? It was Corey's. And guys, every time we were sitting in these courtrooms, and I never left my father's side, on these wooden pews in these corrupt courtrooms in New York, with these rigged judges, the worst you've ever seen. You know, daughters working for the Democratic Party, head fundraisers and everything else. You know, charged with 34 felonies, you'd stand up, you'd walk out, and every single time this happened, there was just a light, and it, you know, it felt like the lowest of times, and then some aspect of the sea would part, and there was hope, and you started going in this direction, and everything just seemed to work, and the stars would start aligning. I mean, 91 felony convictions, and we've overturned every single one of them, right? It's not coincidental. There was somebody watching down, and it was the ultimate David and Goliath type story. You know, the media was Goliath, the government was Goliath, the weaponization of law enforcement, that was Goliath, and I think David was him, and really David was him, but David was the American people, honestly. And we beat back those evil forces, and we did so tremendously. But believe me, God was watching down, and God was using him in a meaningful way.
So, picking up on that last point, you make the point in the book, this is not just about Donald Trump. This is not about your family. It also extends to everybody in the Trump organization, but it also extends to everybody who was a supporter. You say, the same people that despise Donald Trump despise you. The ones who have relentlessly persecuted him won't stop until they come after you too. This is a battle for all of us. So tell us about that.
We might have been the tip of the spear, but they were doing this to all of us, guys. They were doing it to all of us. They were silencing all of us. They were weaponizing the IRS against our churches. They were weaponizing the IRS against conservative organizations. I guarantee you, if you go back and look at the files, I guarantee you this organization was targeted by the IRS in some way, shape, or form during that period of time. They were trying to indoctrinate our children. They were turning down the volume on social media, anything that we posted. Right? You posted an article that that you didn't agree with. I mean, how many people in here saw censorship among one of the social platforms? Like everyone? Right?
Well, the laptop from hell story got
totally
modeled, right?
You had 51 CIA intelligence officers who came out and signed a piece of paper saying it was Russian disinformation. I don't know. That looked like Hunter Biden doing crack to me, and I like, you know. And you know what's ironic? Like, I'm a guy who goes to bed at like a reasonable time. I say prayers with my kids. Since the age of 2, my kids have said the Pledge of Allegiance. They say the Lord's Prayer. We have these like cute little, now I lay me down to sleep. I pray, Lord, my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray, Lord, my soul. So my kids say that every night, and one other kind of little family prayer that we do, and then like that's it. And like there's no pictures from hell. There's no laptops from hell. There's no like, you know what I do. Like Lily runs one of our golf courses. Like you know what we sell. I've never seen a guy that had so many entities and not sell a product. Like I'm really trying to figure it out. Like I really understand.
He was an energy expert, apparently.
I mean, Greg, you understand the capital markets as well as anybody in the world. Like, have you ever seen somebody that had 50 entities or 40 entities that all interconnected in some way, shape, or form, but without an actual product to sell? Like I'm trying to figure it out. Yeah, he had to paint. No, the finger paintings. As soon as his father became president, he became a wonderful finger painter. How do you think I'd be treated right now if all of a sudden I miraculously became, the next Picasso in my own mind? I'm painting little birds with my feet, right? Like, give me a break, right? And you know what they did? They did nothing to this guy. I got 112 subpoenas. I've never gotten so much as a speeding ticket. I've never gotten a parking ticket. No drugs, no smoking, no misbehaving, no laptop from hell. Like, I mean, they threw the guy's firearm in a dumpster, and then they had to go retrieve it because you know this whole story. I mean, could you imagine if Laura Trump threw my firearm in a dumpster outside a supermarket, and then they send law enforcement to go fish it out of the dumpster the next day? You think they would do that for me? No way. Like, I'd be in jail for the rest of my life. And, Jill, even you couldn't fix that problem.
So we've walked through the massive amount of what was thrown at you. We've walked through what the stakes are. You say early in your book, quote, "This country needs fighters. It needs people who will stand up for it, who can't be bought, bribed, or coerced." Is that your call to action to everybody listening to you tonight?
Yeah, guys, it absolutely is. Our family needed this voyage like a hole in the head, right? And I say that we didn't need to be here. Obama, he was a community organizer, and now he lives in Martha's Vineyard. My father lived in Palm Beach, and the penthouse of Trump Tower, and everywhere else. Believe me, the last thing that he needed to be doing is sitting in courthouses every single day. Trump Force One is awfully nice. Mar-a-Lago is awfully nice. Playing golf whenever you want is awfully nice. Building hotels all around the world is awfully nice. He needed a job like a hole in the head, but he was sick and tired of the incompetence. He's sick and tired of the no different than your father. Sick and tired of the incompetence. It's exactly why he did it. It's why your father did it. And we need good people to do it. And honestly, they thought they could make his life so damn uncomfortable that he would just tap out and he would quit. And he was never willing to quit, and he just fought through. And I think that became a very inspirational thing for this country, because I think everybody in their own personal lives can relate. We've all had times where it felt like those walls were falling in, right? Where they're about to crush you in some way, shape, or form, and you were under siege. And honestly, I hope in eternity, and this is something I try and really convey in this book, I hope that people realize that you can always fight through the unthinkable. You've got to keep punching. You've got to use unthinkable amounts of energy. Sometimes it's not pleasant. Sometimes you need to stick with your principles. Sometimes you need the help of God. You probably always need the help of God, but you can do it. You can do it. And I think that's the one thing my father has done for this country. I think he's been the greatest example of resilience ever. And in doing so, we're saving God. We're saving faith. We're saving our First Amendment. We're saving freedom of speech. We're saving our kids. We're saving education. We've killed DEI. I think 4 years ago, you had Colin Kaepernick, who was literally sitting there kneeling every time the national anthem was played at football games. Guess what? Colin Kaepernick is gone. Guys my size. Guys my size are no longer swimming in women's sports. Right? It's not happening. The youth in this country, large thanks to Charlie, who is a great friend of mine, but the youth in this country has totally changed. Now all of a sudden you've got young guys, a couple of them right here, who are literally trying to take over student bodies in their colleges, in their high schools, right? They're trying to bring in conservative speakers. You know, when the teacher tries to teach them some lesson that they just fundamentally disagree with, they're happy to take the F on their test out of principle because they're willing to fight back. It's actually become cool to be conservative. And that never would have happened. None of that would have ever happened. And that's before you get into the economy, and that's before you get into Middle East peace and the saving of Israel and stopping wars all around the globe and being the best peacetime president ever. And none of that would have ever happened had we not won the siege. And we won the siege together, guys. We won the siege as a nation. We won it as a family. We won it together.
As our time starts to draw to a close, I'm going to incorporate a few of the pre-written audience questions. One of them reads, Trump family dynasty, ! Will you or a sibling consider running?
You know, I've gotten a lot of this question ever since I wrote this book, and I keep saying to people, don't give me nightmares, honestly. It's like, I called my father the morning, so this was November 6th. This was the morning after the election, right? The last election. I go, Pops, I love you to death. I've been on the stage with you for 10 years. You know, I'm officially retiring from politics. You know, I'll go run the company and awfully good at it, and we have the best real estate company in the world, and you go save our nation, and you know, and we're going to do great things. And you know, it's I hope the Republican Party has changed so much and got back into Reagan era Republican Party. And in doing so, we'll have so many good people on that stage, right? Where it's not the, you know, it's not the Jeb Bushes, it's not the, you know, it's not the Mitt Romneys, it's not the Ben Sasses, it's not the Paul Ryans. It's people who are willing to go out there and absolutely fight for the heart and soul of our nation. And I truly think that's the fundamental difference my father has made. I think for the next 5 generations, you're going to have fighters as part of the Conservative Party, and you're going to have people that are loud, that don't back down, who put their values first. And so I'm skirting the answer to this. Listen, I think it's probably the same answer that he had back in the day when he spoke to Oprah. If it ever got so bad that you had no other choice, maybe at the right time, if my family was in the right spot, I'm talking about my children and my wife. But man, is it an awful job. It's an awful career. We've seen the best of it. We've seen the worst of it. It's evil, nasty stuff, but you do need good, competent people. And by the way, we need business leaders in Washington.
Last couple.
And so never say never. Never say never, but hopefully I can avoid the nightmare of, you know, hopefully we can both avoid the nightmare of politics for a little while longer.
Last couple questions. What do you make of the No Kings protests?
You know how hard it is for me to take somebody seriously that dresses up in a tutu? Like, I mean, you legitimately have like grown men wearing dresses and high heels. And I went to school in Washington, D.C., and you see these things. You see people like protesting the IMF and the World Bank and all sorts of stuff. And they would literally be passing out flyers, and there would be spelling mistakes on the flyers. And they'd be wearing the same thing. They'd be wearing garbage bags, and they look like total hell. They look like they were hungover from the night before. It's like, if you're serious about a cause, like, why don't you actually present yourself as like serious human beings? And they're incapable of doing that. And honestly, they look like morons because of it. And so, you know, like our No Kings protest ended on November 6th when we won the popular vote. We won every swing state. You know, our No Kings protest is when every church in the country is filled every Sunday now, right? That's our No Kings protest.
You were born during the Reagan presidency. Your dad achieved great accomplishments in business in the Reagan era. Your dad met Ronald Reagan on multiple occasions. There's a photo in the book with you and your dad and other leaders in the Oval Office where the portrait of Ronald Reagan, which Donald Trump moved into the Oval Office, is above your left shoulder. What does Ronald Reagan mean to you?
So there's 2 great pictures. I've got a great picture. I've got a great mullet. This must be, you know, circa 1993 or something with Hillary Clinton. It's a great picture. You guys see it in the book. And she's just looking at her. Never did I think that Hillary would have this profound impact on my life later on. And so it's like every time I see this picture of us as little kids with Hillary, I just start laughing. And then there's this most beautiful picture in the book of my father and my mother. My mother was an amazing woman. I mean, an amazing, amazing, amazing woman. in the White House with Ronald Reagan, and I would venture to say that even this library didn't have that picture. And I'll get you the copy, but it is the most beautiful picture of them standing there having this conversation. My father always respected Reagan immensely, you know, especially this peace through strength. That's like his exact mantra, right? That's exactly what he does. Is I don't want to go to war, but if we have to go to war, I want to knock their heads off so badly that no one ever messes with the United States again. You know. It's like, you know, like wrestlers, they're so tough, but they're confident, so they don't need to fight. Or so oftentimes in other sports, you've got these jocks that aren't actually that tough, so they become bullies. Like, my father always appreciated the wrestlers, right? The guys that were so tough, and everybody knew you were tough, and everybody was never going to mess with you because you were tough. And that's what my father wants this country to be, and that's exactly what your father wanted this country to be. He wanted this country to be so tough that no one would even think about messing with us for fear of ramifications. And that's exactly how he wants to lead. And so my father always had respect, immense respect, probably more respect for Ronald Reagan than any other president before. And I can tell you how little respect he had for others that dragged us into never-ending conflicts, who were totally incompetent, who were asleep at the wheel, which is why he ultimately ended up running. And thank God we won 3 times, but we'll just call it 2.
Eric, we're very grateful that you made the trip here, that you've spent this time with us. I'd like to close with a lesson that you drew from Colin, the young St. Jude's patient who was fighting cancer. You said, "As Colin taught me and can teach us all, nothing is hopeless or impossible if we never quit." Eric, thank you.